born to be spectacular. You were born to be phenomenal. You are awesome. You are amazing. You are breathtaking. You are a work of art, a masterpiece. I have faith in you. I believe in you. We have faith in you. We believe in you. Now I just need you to have faith in yourself. I need you to believe in yourself. I get it. I get it. The choice to succeed is as simple as ABC 1, 2, 3. And right now, I need you to listen because we are going to go from A to Z. And I dare you, yes you, to make a choice and choose to change average into amazing, broken into booming, confusion into clarity, desperation into domination, endangered into exceptional, failure into first class, give up into go-getter, hopeless into hungry. Nah, I gotta say it like Les Brown. You gotta be hungry. And what that means is your classroom has to be like your favorite place to eat. You gotta eat it. You gotta drink it. You gotta see the success. You gotta live the success. You gotta breathe the success. And you got this. And that's why you made the decision to change introverted into influence, jacked up into jaw-dropping, knocked out into knowledge of self, last place into the leader of the pack, minor into major, no chance into next level, out of touch into outstanding. This is just a reminder of how powerful words can be as it relates to our mindset. So I need you to kill that negativity and speak that positivity into existence, because those that can weather the storm, those that can fight through the adversity, those that can push through the problems are putting themselves in a position to prosper. And winners like you understand. And that's why you chose to turn pain into passion, power, and purpose. Quitter's mentality into quality lifestyle, regret into redemption, sadness into superstar status, terrible into terrific, unlikely into upward bound, vindictive into victory, weakness into winning formula, X'd out into extraordinary. I know, they start with E, but they're pronounced with an X, so we gon' make it work. Yearning into yes, you can. And finally, from zero into ginormous. And that's how you go to the next level and win, not only in the classroom, but in every aspect of your life.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Yeah, where we need ya. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. We always could spot a friend. Welcome back, and I smile when I think how it must have been. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Well, welcome back. Welcome to our regularly scheduled October 14th board work session meeting. We are glad to see you all, but nobody had fun, and I can't wait for the highlight reels next week to show our welcome back for all the employees over the district. That was pretty phenomenal, and quite awesome. Dr. Lewis, I want to thank you and your team for all of their efforts and all the giveaways and the gifts by Ms. Florine Dawkins. So thank you all for everything. We appreciate it. It was awesome. And we'll hear later from Dr. Lewis at the end of our work session about how the first day and week of school has gone. But we do want to welcome some special guests that we always see at our meetings, our partners at the library, Ms. Alan Harkness and Marianne Rickner from the museum, and longtime supporter of public education, Ms. Ollie Tarver is in the back there. We hadn't seen Ms. Ollie Tarver. You're looking well. Thank you so much for joining us. And if we have any administrators or any team leaders from the building, you can wave your hands, but I don't think we have anybody there. They're tired. Okay, so we'll move on to our meeting. And we also allow the public agenda at our work session as well as our regularly scheduled board meeting. We do not have anyone signed up today. That has to happen by 12 noon, but I will take this by 2 o'clock p.m., sorry. But I will take this opportunity to read the content of our policy where it says all official meetings of the board shall be open to the press and the public. However, the board may meet in executive session. Speakers' remarks should be directed to the board and shall be limited to 5 minutes each speaker. Citizens are encouraged to address items on the board agenda or to initiate presentations of issues appropriate for school board consideration. If an individual desires to speak, they may contact the superintendent's office through Ms. Karen Jones to be placed on the agenda by 2 p.m. The board meeting and the work session is not the appropriate place to address criticisms of particular employees or individual parent complaints when such complaints have not been first addressed to the attention of the appropriate administrator for resolution. Citizens are encouraged to follow our normal channels to address individual parent complaints and or problems. And we will move on to our Education Committee. Ms. Buckner, you have a presentation there.
We have 2 items today. 3.01, the education news. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We decided from our Division of Teaching and Learning we provide All right, here we go. We decided to bring to you something new from our division, and we wanted to look at, kind of highlight a couple of topics that will be going on during the months that we are in. For instance, in August, we wanted to highlight the things that are going on in August, and those things that are important to DTL, and just give a brief synopsis of what's happening. Similar to what the library and museum they do. This is going to be an ongoing basis. We'll provide this information to you on a monthly basis. It's not designed for a presentation or anything. It's just designed for information for you that you can look at. Certainly, it's interactive. I think there's some links in there that you can click. But this month we talked about our summer learning experience, brief synopsis there. We'll do a presentation on that next month. We've talked about our CHIPS camp, which is our first annual CHIPS camp that we had 31 students involved in, that Columbus State University, Columbus Tech, Tuskegee, as well as Troy State University were involved in providing. And then our Empower conference. Really excited about that. Did a fabulous job. Our team worked collaboratively across multiple divisions. We had over 400 individuals attend that each day, and that ran from Monday through Friday. So it was a daunting task, but it was really beneficial for our teachers and our administrators. And then we'll have some departmental updates, and then it's list of calendar things that are going on throughout the month. Again, it's designed for you as well as the public, just to highlight some things that are happening in Division of Teaching and Learning.
All right, thank you. I was just kind of looking through it now. I appreciate that, and it will be helpful for us as we are trying to explain for the board members to be informative when they have to talk
Absolutely.
to the citizens and parents. So thank you so very much for that. And so next.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3.02, and Mr. Knopf is here to explain it to us.
I already gave it to him, so thank you. Good evening. Patrick Knopf, Director of Research, Accountability, and Assessment. All right, it's seems like it's been 12 short months since I was here, having the time of my life. Okay, so I have given you guys, based on last year's feedback, I gave you guys the actual performance levels broken out. What I'm presenting now is a high-level overview of our state assessment results, followed by Christine Hull, our Executive Director of Pre-K to 12 curriculum, is going to also talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we have planned for the year based on the information that we got here. So first up, you can see, and again, I'll just orient you to this, as the state published the results, they published it based on the percentage of students that are reading at grade level, also the developing and above and proficient and above. And here you can see the state and the district side by side there. And again, looking at the proficient and above, which is the aim for all students, is to be proficient or distinguished out of the 4 levels. You can see that the state was at 38.6, and our 3rd grade students were at 26.2, and proficient and above for math was 45.6, and for the state, and 28.7 for the district. One of the things that we found with our 3rd graders for ELA performance is that a significant number of students did not actually complete the writing portion, which is a large part of what's included in this. And so one of the things that was a takeaway for us was making sure that students attempt to write something, because if they don't write anything at all, of course, you don't get any points. And so there was a large portion of 3rd graders that did not actually complete that portion of it.
Do we know why?
I mean, there are lots of different reasons. I think some of it is, one of the things, I say they didn't write. Some of them wrote things, but they copied the passage, for instance, or what they wrote was too short to score. And so I think one of the aims would be making sure that they have a strategy going into the writing for what needs to be done. I think when students copy, I think it tells me that they wanted to write something, they didn't want to leave it blank, but they weren't certain about what it was that they needed to write.
And I think that's a good idea, because when I was working at another district, the same thing happened. Students just don't write. So we had started to do a writing strategy of how to write something.
Yeah.
And because it's like they're blank. They don't know what to do. And if you give them some type of strategy to write, or you need a strategy for everything, really. But if you give them some type of strategy, they can attempt to write something. They'll know to say, at least we can do this or that. But yes, that's a very good idea to teach the strategies.
So here you can see the comparison of the performance from last year to this year. And just to point out, if you look at the ELA overall again, the prior year ELA scores were 1.1 points higher. Math, we actually went up 1.1 points. And you can see with the overall reading percentages, last year's 3rd graders were at 54.8% reading on grade level. This year, we were at 57.4. And again, I want to go back to something with 3rd grade. We had the P3 2025 plan where we have had internal targets that we have set for students. And so this group of students this year had not had any state assessments prior to this. So we were using other data points to track them going into the state assessment. And I'm pleased to say that what we did is we spread out the amount of gains each school needed to see. And I'm pleased to say that we hit the target. It looks, and actually exceeded the target for that cohort of students set on the state assessment. And we've continued to track those students and the other students that were in pre-K through second grade up to this point as well. So next year's targets are significantly bigger, and it's a bit of a jump, but so far the cohorts are on track based on the internal targets that we set for them. Again, here's the fourth grade performance. You can see the proficient and above for ELA is at 36.1 for the state and 27.3 for the district, and math is at 45.7 and 29.5. This is the year-to-year comparison. You can see that the district in ELA actually went up 2 points, and in math went up 2.7 points, and for reading went up 2.6 points overall. Please.
Okay, so like looking at that, when you showed us the scores for third grade last year to fourth grade this year, there really has not been much change. And that's what I'm more concerned with, not, I mean,
Sure.
I get we need to track grades to grade, but also seeing if we only have 27 at proficient and distinguished at the end of third grade, how do we get more of them by the end of fourth grade?
And so we also, and that's a good question, we also have looked at those particular cohorts. It's interesting, and again, 2 data points don't make a trend. So I'm curious to see next year's results. But what we noticed is we actually tracked with the state. If they went down that cohort, then our cohort went down as well. So there's obviously something unique to each of those cohorts based on, and I know people say the pandemic's over, but we're still seeing pockets of mislearning in these groups of students that seem to be unique to each cohort, and how that manifests itself year to year. That's the part where I say, again, next year we'll be able to maybe see more with the trend itself. But when we looked at the cohort, our cohorts matched the state. If the state went up, we went up. That cohort went up. If it went down, it went down. So again, I think, and that's what we've looked at internally more so is the cohorts. We're reporting it the way it's reported year to year, but we also are tracking those cohorts and looking at what's unique about each one of them in terms of what they may have missed, say in 2021 and then in 2022 based on what was going on with school at the time. Okay, so for fifth grade performance, you can see proficient and above was at 41.6 for the state and 31.4 for the district. In math, it was 37.4 for the state and 21.2 for the district. And science is the addition for fifth grade that the other grade levels don't take. And you can see the state was at 40 and the district was at 29.2. In terms of the performance comparison, again, you can see with our ELA and math that the district was went down a little bit, 0.8 and 0.5 for math, and 0.42 for reading on grade level. Sixth grade performance, again, proficient and above for ELA is 39.2 for the state and 27.3 for the district, and math was 32.9 and the district was at 14.9. And if we look at our year-to-year comparison, again, you can see that we dropped a little bit in ELA, and that we dropped also in math, and that there was a bit of a bump in the reading levels. All right, seventh grade performance, the proficient and above was 39.1 for the state and 27 for the district in ELA. Math was 34.9 and 20.4 for the district, for this 34.9 for the state and 20.4 for the district. Again, the year-to-year comparison, our ELA had a slight increase of 1 point, and there was a bit of a drop, 1.4 in math, and you can see there was a nice big bump for ELA reading on grade level for that group. Eighth grade performance, and this includes science and social studies as well. You can see the district was at 42.1 for proficient and 31% for the district. Math, 36.2 with 22.5. Social studies was 35.9 and the district was at 24.8. And then we have the science. And remember, this is the grade level where students that are in eighth grade, those students that have been identified to be ready for acceleration, those students take physical science. And so we include physical science and science for both of these because it counts as their science for that year. And you can see here with the EOG science, the proficient and above for just regular 8th grade science was 26.4 and the state was 17.4. You can see though that our high school physical science students exceeded the state. And again, these are the students that are handpicked to take the assessment for that course. It's no longer counted in high school anymore. It's only counted for 8th grade. And again, you can see our year-to-year comparison for this cohort, the ELA, there was a slight drop of 1.9, and for math, there was another drop there as well. Reading on grade level also saw a drop with this group, this particular cohort. So these are the high school assessments. Remember, we reduced the number of high school assessments. We used to have 8 of them, and now we only have 4. You can see here we have the American Literature, Algebra 1, U.S. History, and Biology. Now, Algebra 1 also includes all of the kids that are in 8th grade. Again, those physical science students, more often than not, also end up being the students that take algebra in 8th grade, so these scores include them as well. But generally speaking, most of the largest body of this is made up of 9th graders that are taking algebra. And again, you can see the proficient and above for the state to the district comparison for AMLIT was 38.9 to 32.4. U.S. History was 37.1 to 22.5. Algebra, 35.8 to the district's 21.4. And biology was 45.5 to 38.2. And we did the same thing here with this. You can see that our AMLIT overall, there was a bit of a drop there, and the state also saw a drop. You can see with algebra, again, there was a bit of a drop there, and the state also saw a drop. So again, I don't want to project too much, but I think there's something clearly going on with these cohorts of students that seem to kind of, where the state and the district would converge in terms of the cohorts taking things, it appears that they kind of match up. Reading on grade level, the district was at 65.9 this year, a little bit of a drop. Again, this is kind of strange because we're talking about 11th graders, so it's not a year-to-year comparison. This is any of the students that might have taken AMLIT where, depending on the course progression that they took for high school, so it could be a mix of students, which is kind of unlike the EOG where we compare year to year to year. There's a bit of a gap here for these students. And then also you can see the state had a bit of a drop, but again, it's kind of hard to compare year to year just because it's such a unique cohort each year. So here we look at our comparison districts. For 3rd grade results, you can see that Chatham actually surpassed us in ELA and in math in this category for 3rd grade. For 4th grade, though, the district, Muscogee was on top in the cohort for ELA, and Chatham was for math. And again, you look at ELA for 5th grade, Muscogee was on top there, Chatham for math, and we were on top again for science. And when you look at the 6th grade results for ELA, Muscogee was top, and math for Chatham. And ELA for 7th grade, the district was 27, so they were overall on top, and Chatham was on top for math.
Who is Richmond? Is that Albany?
No, sir, that's Augusta. And Bibb is Macon. Thank you for asking that. All right, here overall you can see the 8th grade. Again, they have the 4 categories. So for ELA, the district was on top there, and in math, and in science. And you can see, again, our physical science really stood out. And you can see the social studies there as well was the district. And then our high school, we were on top for AMLIT, algebra, and biology, and the Chatham was on top for U.S. history.
You might want to mention about the AP.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Dr. Lewis. One of the things also with the U.S. history is that our AP students, their scores don't go in. They don't take the exam. And so our best testers are, generally, they take the AP course, which means they don't have a score. So it definitely, and that's not, I mean, that's district-wide. So that's every school that offers AP U.S. history, which is all of them. Their best testers come out of their pool, and they take the AP exam, which later when we look at CCRPI, that will be of a benefit because they'll take that AP exam score and they'll count it as a test score. But for now, with these results, they don't apply any of those business rules to that. So
Do other districts
Yeah, they have to, it's one or the other.
They don't
Well, I'm
take
just saying, because like if we're taking our best out of the schedule,
they don't offer AP as much.
or the AP ones,
Yeah, so
coming out
that,
of bids and everybody else's too.
we test more students in AP. So I think we have not as a practice, we don't dissuade students from taking, because irrespective of how they do on it, they're taken out of the pool at that point. So we don't necessarily go through and, I don't want to say weed out students, but I mean, we don't hem them in to take it or not take it.
Yeah, I was just trying to looking at the different districts, seeing if our practice was the same as the other districts.
We push more into AP if they want to take it than some other districts offer it.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more offerings in terms of AP. So, again, like with last year, when we looked at this, and again, this is not a comprehensive list by any means, but when we look at it, obviously we have areas that we want to focus on, to see improvement in different areas. And again, back to Ms. McCrae's question about the individual cohorts of students, from looking at those individual cohorts of students and trying to figure out, again, what would have happened to them in the pandemic when they lost the last quarter of school, and what would it have looked like when they were virtual at home, trying to glean from that what areas we would need to focus on. So pre-K through third grade, we're going to continue with our P325 plan, continue to focus on early literacy skills, obviously writing and language across all grade levels, because again, the ELA scores include the writing. And so, looking at doing some things, and Ms. Hull is going to speak more specifically about the types of things that we're talking about offering. Operations and algebraic thinking at all levels, statistics and probability and geometry at the middle school. The math standards are changing this year, so we know, in fact, we won't have math scores right away because of that, and they won't even offer a retest just because they're going to try to validate those scores. So we definitely anticipate seeing some impact to math scores next year, just because it's a whole new set of standards, a whole new assessment. Everything's new. And every time they reset it, it creates a situation where we have to recalibrate and go through and relearn. However, we do know some skill level weaknesses and things that need to be addressed in terms of those new standards. Go ahead.
I have a question that's more curriculum based, so it might be for somebody else. So like when I was looking at the number for Algebra 1 in 8th grade, it was a fairly low percentage that were proficient and distinguished. What determines whether or not they go on to the next level in 9th grade, or are they given the chance to kind of repeat Algebra 1?
If they don't,
I get that they're given a chance to kind of advance.
Yeah.
If they aren't then able to, what happens, I guess?
So that's a good question. If they do not show proficiency on the exam, then they repeat the course. They don't get course credit. We don't pass them on. We make them repeat it.
So if that was 27, only 27% of our kids then went further.
But again, when you're looking at algebra, though, that includes everybody. That includes 9th graders that took it for the first time as well. So the 8th graders that are in there, generally speaking, they tend to do better because they were handpicked to take it, because they showed some proficiency in advanced math.
We also, if they're 8th graders and they're not performing well by semester, then we make adjustments and put them back into an 8th grade appropriate course. They don't continue to struggle or whatever, we make that adjustment.
And then what do most of our high schools do for kids that come in for play? Because like Columbus High used to do a placements test for all their math students. And I know this year they didn't, and I was kind of curious as to how other high schools handle that too. I mean, I get for Columbus High, they might, all of them have new kids coming in, so how they determine that.
So one of the things that the district offers all 8th grade students is the PSAT 8-9, and our office actually creates a rising 9th grader file for them. So we take everything, we re-roster everything, create a file that has their GMAT scores, their STAR scores, their PSAT 8-9. So we actually give them the data they need to make scheduling decisions, and we do that in the spring. So as soon as we have data, we re-roster it and send it on to the schools so that they can make informed decisions about students and what their schedule needs to look like.
And I guess, how's that work? If they're coming from a private school, they just take what they have available from that and make the determination?
Yes, ma'am. One of the other things.
Most of the,
I'm sorry.
excuse me, 1 second, I'm just, Lori's question stimulate. At most of the middle schools, does most eighth graders just take regular math?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The lion's share do, for sure.
Okay, and then those that show, according to test performance, those are the ones that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought it was. That's
Yes,
what
ma'am.
my
It's a
child
small
was in.
subset of students that do.
Because I guess to explain a little bit, I'm asking, sometimes I've heard, well, if they've had that class, they can't repeat it because they've already, kind of had it. And I just know that 8th to 9th grade can be tricky because I'm one of those parents. I'm like, oh yeah, let them take the hard one in 8th grade. And then if it doesn't go well, we can kind of reevaluate. And I just kind of want to make sure there was that flexibility that and I was trying to kind of determine at what level they decided that.
Again, that's the reason why, once they get into the first quarter, the 8th grade year, we start looking and seeing who's struggling, and that kind of then make an adjustment as far as their curriculum placement going forward. Because we have our live meetings generally in October, and that's where we're asking that question. Which kids are in Algebra 1 right now that are not doing well with a C or above, and making adjustments and putting those kids in.
And those teachers have to recommend credit. So at the end of the
Right.
year, it's not like the kid's schedule just floats through and somebody says, okay, well, they had algebra. They submit to Mr. Seifert a list of students, and it's a yes or a no. Do they get the credit or not? Do they meet the criteria to get the credit? So, I mean, they put eyes on it to ensure that we're just not putting them through.
Is that impacted by the end of course test? So it depends on the teacher, but if a child, let's say a child shows proficiency on the end of course test, does that automatically mean that the child has that credit or has that?
Yes, students, of course, we start looking at students in 6th grade, and they matriculate through, and generally, they are, by the time they get to 8th grade, they're pretty much identified. There's very few students that are pulled out. I mean, we want to give them the opportunity to take that particular course, but if they do not pass the course with a B or better, and they have to be proficient on the end of course test in order to gain credit for that course. If they do not meet those criteria, then they're taking the course over again. I also want to say that, for those students that are struggling in algebra, we also provide, a lot of those students are scheduled for a support course, an algebra support course, and they take that course generally prior to or in congruence with the algebra course, and they work on skills to help support them to take the milestones.
Is that concept of algebra?
I'm sorry?
I was just asking, do we still have that concept of algebra course?
No, we
Let's go.
we don't teach that course
Okay,
anymore.
now let me go
That's-
back to
yeah, that's-
Laura's question about the credit for
Yeah.
the algebra.
Yeah.
So one must have both. One must show proficiency on the end of course test.
Correct.
And
Have a B in the course.
have a B in the course.
Yeah.
They have to have both of those. Okay, now, do we recognize that, and that's just it? Because some kids are just smart. They know the algebra, and they can just go take that, but they didn't do the homeworks. I'm just saying, do we, because teachers tend to know some kids will not have a B because they didn't do the work, they didn't do the assignments, but they are very competent. But because I'm just thinking about my daughter, she used to forget to do assignments, and that was a 0, but she had a B in her class, but I'm just saying. So are we penalizing kids? Are we also doing a good evaluation on the kids before we deny them that credit?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so
Yeah, we want to
will-
make sure that those kids, when they go to the 9th grade, they're proficient at that particular course. Also, we have a number of courses, well, the accelerated course for those particular kids. We also offer the accelerated course for algebra that moves them even quicker through the course.
And as we do our personalized learning, let's go back to, you were saying something in the 6th grade, how we can easily identify these kids. So even as early in the 6th grade, we are identifying kids who are advanced in all subjects. including algebra.
Absolutely.
And accordingly, we do personalized learning for these kids according to their potential.
Yeah, these kids are matriculating through at an advanced level.
Okay, and everything. Okay.
So, again, the U.S. history course alignments, and I know that our secondary content specialist has done a lot of work out looking at that. Personalized learning in the multi-tiered systems and supports, again, just ensuring that those pieces are in place as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Christine Hall so she can kind of talk through the things that we're looking at this upcoming year in terms of supports for students and teachers and in moving the needle here. Who's that guy?
Thank you, Mr. Knopf. Good evening. Christine Hull, Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction, Pre-K through 12. And so we've seen the data. We have analyzed it. We have discussed it and dug into it. And so now what's the plan? What are we going to do moving forward to address the learning gaps that we know exist, to really look at teacher training, determine what is it that our teachers need support, where do our schools need support, and where do individual students and families need support. So I'm going to take you through how we've laid this out to try to focus the work, because we can try to throw a lot of things out there and hope something sticks, or we can be very strategic about how we do this and focus our efforts in some key places for return on our investment that we really feel like will move the needle based on evidence-based practices and research. So we decided to focus on 5 different areas. The very first one is, in my opinion, the most important. It's Tier 1 instruction. And what we mean by Tier 1 instruction is this is high-quality instruction that is consistent across every grade level in every classroom in our district, no matter who the teacher is, no matter what the content, that 80% of students should be proficient if you have solid Tier 1 instruction. Well, we just saw the numbers, and we know we're not there. But we do have a plan moving forward as to how to help our teachers, because as you know, we have a lot of strategic waiver teachers, a lot of brand new teachers to the field coming from other fields who may need some assistance in pedagogy, may know their content, but really need some help instructionally. So we want to take a look at the state standards, making sure that all of our teachers know the state standards and they understand the level of rigor for those state standards. What we find often, and this is not unique to Muscogee County, it's across the nation, where teachers are teaching students below the standard level, and then if they never see work at the level of the standard, how do we expect them to demonstrate proficiency? So we really need to go back to the standards-based instruction, making sure that teachers are teaching on grade level, even if the student is not there yet. The students still must be exposed to the rigor of the standard, because if the first time they see it is on the test, they're not going to be able to perform with proficiency. So we want to go back to standards-based classroom, make sure that all of our teachers understand the state standards, understand the level of rigor of those standards. They're able to break those standards down to where students can understand them, where students know what they are supposed to know and what they are able to do, what they need to be able to do by the time they finish that course. And those are our learning targets and success criteria. We have to be very clear. It's called teacher clarity. Teachers have to be very clear for themselves and for their students. These are the targets, and this is what it takes to get there. Because if not, we're all just poking around in the dark. So making sure that our teachers and students understand, here's the standard, and here are the steps to get to proficiency or above with those particular content standards. Universal screening, we've been doing that now. We're way ahead of a lot of districts in Georgia, thanks to our student services collaborating with us with MTSS processes and our universal screening that we do with STAR. We have other measures of universal screening that now our teachers are very familiar with those. Looking at that data, examining that data that we get from those screening points, and then using the data that we're getting on our universal screener to inform instruction. So that's the next step. Once we do the screener, what do we do with that data? And how do we move students?
If I may interject, that's important because the data we get from GMAS is not to the level of specificity or granular that we need. That's why these screening assessments are so important, because they get us down to the skill level that we need to know so we can really deal with the deficiencies in a specific area. Again, we don't get that level of specificity in GMAS scores. That's why a universal screener like this is so important.
And we screen 3 times a year, but we can do it much more than that. And that's where we talk about personalized learning. If there's a need for additional screening for a certain group of students, for particular students, those screeners are always available to us. So we do use those, and we do really dig into what that data is telling us about that specific student in that specific grade level or content area, and then adjust instruction accordingly. We also are going back and revisiting with our teachers formative assessment rather than summative assessment. We all have to have summative assessments, but what are some high yield strategies for formative assessments that students can take all along the way, so we're not just waiting until the end and then testing, we're measuring progress all along. So again, it's very clear where the student is in relation to the rigor of the standard. We've been doing gradual release of responsibility as a framework in the district for a long time, and it really is releasing the responsibility of the learning to the student so that it is student-centered rather than teacher-focused. It's about what the student is doing rather than what the teacher is doing, and how the teacher presents that information, how do then students take ownership of that and be able to have some efficacy in their own learning. We all do it together as a group. The teacher will demonstrate, lead through modeling, and then we will break off, do it maybe small group, peer-to-peer, and then we have some time for individualized instruction. And I think that's where we really have to go back to that individual instruction. It's still part of good Tier 1 instruction. It doesn't mean that only this group of students gets individual attention. It means that each student gets what he or she needs individually as part of the instruction of the whole class. Personalized learning, we're super excited about this. I know you've heard about this before. We are almost ready to launch our digital learning journals. Pre-K through 12th grade, our pre-K students and non-readers will have a paper journal, and all of our other students will have digital journals that they own and that they set their own personalized learning goals. They have all of their data from their universal screeners, their GMAS. They have additional items they can add to their journals so that we do start to build some student efficacy. And so we are teaching them how to own their own learning. Goal setting is one of those high yield strategies that we're really hoping to push through those digital learning journals. So to be determined, but we are really excited to see how that's going to impact instruction. And those journals can be used for conversations between counselors and students, parents and students. So we're excited to see how that conversation around that child's academic performance and extracurricular performance, how those conversations can be facilitated with that learning journal. Do you have a question?
Yes. How will the parents learn how to engage with the students? How will the parents learn how to engage with students on their learning journals and everything so they can be part of the process?
So that once the student downloads the journal, they have it on their Chromebook and they own it. And that was really important to us because we want the student to feel like it's theirs. So a parent can see it on the student's Chromebook, and we've already, Cheryl Green and her team, she has about 80 teachers, academic coaches on her team from across the district, made that decision collaboratively, and they've already started working on videos to show parents, this is what's in the journal, this is how to use it, these are questions you can ask your students when they come home at night, these are conversations you can have over the dinner table. So we're very excited about that rollout. We do think that that's going to help us move the needle just in terms of getting the conversation out there focused around academic success.
Yep, thank you.
Good question. We are, and Mr. Knopf mentioned this already, we are working really hard right now with our content specialist for what we're calling the Canvas course builds. We want to provide for all teachers, but especially those teachers who've never taught a day in their lives, brand new, still getting used to writing lesson plans, still trying to understand learning targets and success criteria. We want to provide for them in Canvas 180 days of instruction. This is what I'm going to do on week 1. This is what I'm going to do on week 2. And it's in keeping with the pacing guides set by the state and already has the standards embedded along with that gradual release framework, along with model lesson plans, along with student tasks samples of student tasks, samples of student work. This is what it looks like, and this is what you should be seeing your students produce. If you don't see that, now we have to go back and do some intervention. So we're very excited about that. We started with our state-assessed courses, and our goal is, over the coming years, to build a Muscogee County School District bank of courses that any teacher can grab at any time, and it's all laid out for them. And thanks to Dr. Smith and federal programs, we've been able to pay teachers to help us design those courses. We vet them, we will pilot them to make sure that what's in them is correct. And then we want to see the results. We'll see how, after the use of those courses, if we see a difference in results, and we're pretty sure we will. And then Patrick also mentioned the focus on writing framework. It's critical. So we now have SAVIS, and we have HMH, so Into Reading and My Perspectives. We also have iLit 45. And what those, and thank you for helping us get those resources. We have seen a change in pedagogy with our teachers. Instead of, and I'll just use an English example because I'm an old English teacher, a recovering English teacher, we used to teach the entire novel all at one time. I want to teach To Kill a Mockingbird because I've done it for 25 years and I know it inside and out, and I'm going to teach it for 5 weeks. Right? We're not doing that anymore. They're starting with a small anchor text. They use that anchor text as a model for literacy and then as a model for their own writing. Chunking that smaller instead of weeks and weeks and weeks of the same, then that is a new way of teaching. And so we have got to really help our teachers, and we've got really great partners at HMH and SAVIS that are helping us break that down and show a different way of writing, because our students do not have the endurance anymore to get through long passages, and we have to build that endurance back up. And that's part of why we're seeing what we're seeing on the writing. Part of it is regaining endurance for how to take in a text, how to respond to a prompt, and then how to write. Ms. Butner.
Okay. Did I hear you say that you mentioned 3 different types of things that we're using? Or
Okay, so our curriculum, our primary resource for curriculum, HMH, Into Reading. Okay, that's our K-5 resource. It's just the resource that we're using, and they have also changed the way they've structured those resources to match the children of today, because the children of today learn much differently.
Prompts.
Right.
Because of endurance, we're doing shorter prompts.
Shorter passages, more intense rereadings, reciprocal readings, which is all based in the science of reading, which I'm going to get to in just a minute, how we're revamping that, so that they do build up that endurance and they are better able to respond to prompts. And that goes along with the next piece of this. So P3 2025, I know you've heard a lot about it. We shared about it last year. We launched it. We did a lot of professional development surrounding it. We had targets that we set, Patrick's team set for literacy, and we exceeded those targets in pre-K and 3rd grade. We do need to look at the other grade levels, and we have, if we didn't exceed or meet the target, we got a lot closer than we would have without the target. So now Mr. Noss' team has developed the targets for math as well. So we're hoping that with the new math curriculum, the new math standards from the state, now we are able to establish targets for those schools to reach in math as well. So we're adding that to the P3 plan. We have requested that every teacher of pre-K through 3rd grade, to include special education teachers, as well as academic coaches, take the first 5 courses from Cox Campus. Cox Campus is a free online learning module. It's several modules, several courses that come from the Atlanta Speech School, and they specialize in early literacy. They are collaborating with the Rollins Center, and so these courses are free. And our teachers, we've had lots of good feedback from teachers and principals about how they didn't know. They said, we've never heard this, because a lot of our teachers came under a totally different paradigm and pedagogy for teaching reading. We're getting back to the science of teaching reading with phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, really explicitly teaching those skills. So in keeping with that, several of us are going starting Wednesday and Thursday. We have been selected as one of 12 districts in the state of Georgia, and we are the largest. Most districts they work with are very small, so we're super proud of that. We've been selected to be a part of the Rollins Center partnership with the Georgia Department of Education. They are paying for everything, and they are going to train teachers and academic coaches and principals at 10 of our schools, and we have selected those schools, and they're going to give us all the resources for free, all of the training for free, and then we're going to model that for the other schools in our district. So they will be the models for how to do the science of reading with fidelity, how to actually teach children explicit phonetic skills so that we can progress. Did you have a question?
Which schools?
I don't have the list right now, but we can definitely get you that list. I know Blanchard, Winton, Clubview, just off the top of my head. We can get you the list. There's 10. And those 10 schools, we wanted for it to be a variety across regions, across demographics, to make sure that we had schools that look like other schools in our district. St. Mary's, Dawson, it's off the top of my head, but we'll get you the list of the 10 schools. So we're really excited about that. And then, of course, we've already mentioned new math standards and our new math adoption. So we're starting with iReady Math, which you heard about last spring. And we're setting those diagnostic windows now, and those students will be taking those diagnostics and jumping right into iReady. Had a lot of good feedback from our teachers on that this summer. They were all trained as you requested, making sure that they got the materials before summer went out, so they had time over the summer to look and explore and answer all their questions and then get back with us, and then we did some training during the first week of school. Family and community outreach that we're doing with P3 2025, we've done a family newsletter that's going to go out monthly with resources for our families to use at night with their students. And then early intervention practices and resources, thanks again to our MTSS teams for helping us with those early intervention notebooks, and we're going to continue to develop those out. We're also embarking on something that the state does that we would like to model and spread to more of our schools than the state does when they come to visit. And these are the Georgia School Assessment of Performance on Systems, otherwise known as GSAPs. We love our acronyms. And so what we've done is we've tiered our schools. The state has their own way of tiering, but we really looked at our goals and what we want to see instructionally. We've tiered our schools, and district teams are going to go into the schools and really look closely with observations in the classroom, provide the teacher with on-time feedback for instruction. So the focus of those observations in those classrooms across the district will be on instructional strategies and practices, and then coaching cycles. How do we coach teachers through if we do see some need for shoring up instruction? We have our live meeting process, which you're familiar with, and that those live meetings, the questions will have some additional focus on standards-based classroom practices, Tier 1 instruction, and the like. Collaborative planning. We want to go into those schools and go to their collaborative planning meetings. How are they planning across grade levels? How are they vertically aligning from second grade to third grade and on up? Are they having those data discussions with one another in a productive way that centers on instruction? We want to join those meetings and help so that we know where the gaps are as well. We're looking at our instructional coaches. They used to be called academic coaches, so we're still trying to get used to that new language. But with our instructional coaches, we have several new, and we're excited about that, to make sure that they are in those classrooms 90% of their time, working with those teachers, especially our strategic waiver teachers and our new teachers, helping them with pedagogy, helping them with high-yield instructional strategies. And then, of course, continued support for our resources. So as we adopt new resources, we always have to do additional support with those resources to make sure that they're being used with fidelity. For professional development, we are excited to have Dr. James Holman, who is our new Director of Professional Learning and Leadership, Professional Development Leadership, and with his help and Dr. Smith and our division, really looking at additional professional development that's strategic for certain groups of teachers and trying to personalize that professional development instead of here it is for everybody and you might not need it and you're just sitting there and you could be doing something that you need. So looking at some very content-specific trainings, looking at specific resource trainings, again, the Rollins Center and Cox Campus partnership, Tier 1 instruction, personalized learning, and then a heavy, heavy focus on our GTAP teachers and our strategic waiver teachers for support. And last but not least, I would be remiss if I did not mention all the support that the Division of Teaching and Learning gets from our Student Services Division. And with their help, we are also integrating with the MTSS process. working with them on universal screening, analyzing that data, interpreting it, and then providing appropriate interventions for students. We do have our EIP courses and resources for those students who are scheduled in remediation, as well as SST process for student support teams, new attendance protocols, which will be coming out, and then, of course, all the work that we are doing with restorative practices to keep kids in school instead of being suspended out of school, to make sure they are receiving that instruction and not sitting at home without being able to have access to what they would be getting in the classroom. Questions?
I do think it's probably important to note about how important attendance is. That goes without saying, but attendance has been an ongoing issue since the pandemic, and it's not just in Muscogee or across Georgia, but across the country. Just read a report this morning, talked about the number of absences that are occurring throughout the country. So it's really important, and we know that the research tells us that if you miss 10% of the school year, roughly 18 days, you're probably not going to be promoted. So one of the things we are encouraging is, of course, we are working through our MCAP panel, Muscogee County Attendance Panel, to identify those parents and students and to provide the resources to get those kids in school. We are working with our judiciary, if that is the last resort, if we need to reach out and incorporate that. But again, we just need to make sure kids are in school as much as possible and on time. And I know we're all working through transportation issues right now. We always do the first part of the year, first couple weeks of the year. But once it gets planed out, we need to make sure everyone is in school on time, as much as possible. Unless, of course, if they're ill, please do stay home, because we are seeing a resurgence of some of the respiratory viruses, COVID and so on. So we want to continue to be conscious of that. But again, attendance is critically important, because we did see, I think we said 19%, is that correct? Is that the number? 19% of our beginning learners?
Beginning learners miss 19 days.
Beginning learners miss 19 days on average. So you miss school, you miss out.
What do you consider beginner learners? Pre-K, kindergarten?
No, beginning learners based on the assessment data are those students who are far below proficient and are just that. They're just beginning to learn in that particular content area or grade level.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Now, some students missing significantly more days, and I can't reiterate that enough. The key to having kids in school, as Dr. Lewis points out, you can't teach an empty chair, and we just have to have kids in the.
By contrast, the kids who are proficient miss on an average 6 days. So you can clearly see the correlation there.
Can they look at their
Hit your mic,
iPad?
hit your mic.
Excuse me. The ones that are out, can they look at their iPad and catch up for the day that they missed, where they can see what's going on?
We're not here to do that right now. At some point, maybe down the line, but the idea is to be in school.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
they need instruction, that's what.
And we don't want to give incentive for kids to stay home.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's out for an extended period of time,
Right.
like an illness, then they
That's a
have people
homebound
that
ins- right.
coordinate that. for them.
Okay.
Correct.
You're just talking about when the days are scattered throughout the year.
Right.
And he's also talking about the importance of instruction, even then, when they're in short periods of time. The classroom instruction is very important, so they need to be here all the time. I want to make a comment on Mr. Knopf. You've actually kind of gone over and told us where we are, and Mrs. Hull, you kind of presented a plan of what we're going to do going forward, which was overwhelming to a lot of us, which probably is why people don't have questions, because it's just a whole lot. It's a whole lot to do.
A whole lot going on.
Yeah, so it's a whole lot going on, and you have a lot planned, a plan for what is to be done. So, when do you think we can, after you put everything into action, and I'm sure you're not just holding stuff to put. I know we're continually right now. So when will you come back to us and give us another report on where we are? That's for Ms. Hull or
What's the
Keith.
measurement time?
Yeah, well, when will we just get just another, and you know, just just follow, and it could even be on portions of what she presented a whole lot. So even when she brings an update, she might just do portions of what she presented, but we just wanted
Yeah,
just a.
absolutely. I think certainly we can do quarterly reports to just let you know where we are. We take the universal screener. We've taken, they're going to get ready to take it tomorrow. And so we'll get the initial data sets, and then we'll have a midterm. But I think every quarter we can have something to bring forward you and give you an update on where we are with some of these strategies.
Right, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions,
And
board member?
don't we usually get this information broken down by schools too, like emailed to us? Or can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Mrs. Green, that completes the education report.
Thank you, Ms. Buckner. The next committee is our policy committees, and we do not have any items submitted at this time. And then next is Ms. Sly with Discipline Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no items submitted for the disciplinary committee.
Who is property? Ms. Frey, do you want to, next month, we will assign you property. That's what's been. And as you can see on that property committee, you have, we have our standard museum report and library report. And then there is a lease agreement. Ms. Sly, you prepared?
Yeah, I can do it if you like.
Okay, were we switching that?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to do it if you want me to.
Thank you,
today.
perfect.
Okay. So for the monthly report, 6.01 for the library. During July, a new exhibition, Americans in the Holocaust, the Chattahoochee Valley opened at the Columbus Public Library in conjunction with the library's exhibitions, Americans in the Holocaust and Georgia's Response to the Holocaust, Survivors and Liberators. Breaking news, Ledger-Enquirer, photographs closed at the Do Good Fund Gallery on July 29th. They reached 195 people in the programs, and for August, they are looking forward to returning to programs for our school audiences through the museum's PALs and our partnership with the Wentons Art Committee and the Department of Juvenile Justice for Dr. Waltz. We'll offer a free tour of our exhibitions at the Bo Bartlett Center, Facts and Figures, Contemporary Realism for the Columbus Museum at 2:30 on August 19th. So construction on the museum continues to go well and is on schedule. So 6.02 is the library report. And basically they have, did you know that the Columbus Public Library has local history and genealogy department? If your family is from one of the southeastern states, our staff can help you research and learn more. Besides trained staff and classes, check out our website. We have maps, city directories, biological and historical references in print, and local newspapers on microfilm. Online genealogy resources are available at every location. Staff can show you to find census information, military records, court records, and more. And some of the service stories for this past month is the South Branch partnered with the D.A. Turner YMCA for summer outreach youth programming. Staff conducted 8 STEM and storytime programs throughout the summer months for children in grades K through 5. Staff also adopted the Summer Reading Group Challenge for the schedules of area kindergarten transition class programs and early Head Start summer programs. We reached 23 classes from 12 different locations and 286 children and 48 teachers reading over 721 books together. Pretty good. And so do you want me to go over 6.03 as well? Okay, so the superintendent has approved a lease agreement with Just Breathe for Kids in select Muscogee County School District buildings during the 23-24 school year. And its recommended action is to approve the lease agreement with Just Breathe for Kids in select Muscogee County School District buildings during that 23-24 school year. Any questions on that?
Thank you so much, Ms. Sly. Thank you for jumping in. Our next committee report is our Personnel Committee with Ms. Jackson.
Okay, 7.01, the superintendent is recommending Ms. Blair Tucker for the assistant principal at Shaw High School. Ms. Tucker earned her Bachelor's of Science in Education from Columbus State University, her Master's and Specialist in Educational Leadership from Georgia College. She joined Muscogee County School District in 2009 as an English teacher at Veteran Memorial Middle School, where she's currently serving today. She served the school in leadership roles to include English Language Art Department Chair, Personalized Learning Team Lead, and Gifted Facilitator. Her resume is attached. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I go back to 7.0. I'll go to 7.02, which is the personnel report, and there are 4 attachments. Are there any questions?
There are none.
Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Construction Committee, Mr. Cantrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll move on to construction. 8.01, contract award freezer cooler to Forest Road Elementary. The cooler and freezer units at Forest Road are in need of replacement. Both the construction and school nutrition departments seek approval to use Neal, Kindus, and Murray PC as the architects to design and bid the purchase construction of these units. The construction fee will be 7% of the construction cost of this project, not to exceed 7% of the final construction cost. Any questions, ladies? If not, we'll move to the next one. 8.02, contract awards Kendrick and Hardaway. On December 21st, 2021, the board approved 2 WR architects as the architect for the Hardaway and Kendrick Addition upgrade project. February of 23, Section 506, the board approved the construction manager at risk, CM project delivery method. The Muscogee County School District Construction Department advertised for a CM following the standard state procurement process. 5 construction companies attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting. 2 construction companies provided responses to the request. An evaluation team, if I say that right, comprised of 6 evaluators reviewed the response provided by the construction company. The following construction companies attended the pre-bid meeting. The response, and it just jumped off my page for me. The only question I have, Doctor, is did this get bid out? The way I'm reading it sounds like the schools picked who they wanted, but maybe I'm reading it wrong compared to being bidded out. Travis?
Yes. So we had 5 companies who attended the pre-bid meeting, and 2 of them responded to the bid.
Okay.
So the 2 with the asterisk, Freeman and Associates, and Sheridan Contracting are who responded, but we are recommending Freeman and Associates.
Okay.
And the
Thank you, sir.
attachment shows the evaluation summary from the committee who evaluated all of the bids.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any questions, ladies? Change order in the Columbus Museum project. Change order number 3 for phase 2 of the Columbus Museum upgrade project needs board approval because it has a single change order over $50,000. The total budgetary impact of change order number 3 is $59,159. The change order includes changes which address electrical codes, requirements, unforeseen conditions, and adjustments that approve functionally to address additional scope requested by the owner. The change does not increase the overall board-approved budget for this project. The funding source is the approved construction contingency. Any question, ladies? moving on to Travis, do you have anything to go along this evening? Okay. If you look, there's several projects going on right now throughout the school system. How is the stairs on Columbus High School? Did they complete that?
I'm going to yield to Ward to talk
I
to you
know that's a big deal
about-
right there. How old were the old stairs? Do you know what date they might have been? The 20s? Could have been. Yeah. Yes, sir, Ward. Got to have a mic.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
The front stairs at the school, they are poured and will be completed. They're curing right now. About another week, they'll be completely completed.
So they tore them all down?
Tore them all out back to the foundation, removed the trees that were undermining them, removed the roots, and then repoured, new size, new concrete, the whole 9 yards. So
Well, I know it looked good. I went and looked at the steps, the old one, and boy, they was cracking.
And on
all
the
up and
interior
down.
side, they replaced the treads with the marble treads, they had damage, and also they put that back in place as well.
Good, I have to go by and take a look at it.
Yes,
then.
sir.
Sure thing.
Soft wash the building, painting, carpet, new awnings.
Wow.
Ton of work was out there. Of course, new HVAC as well, but that's a different project, so.
There is just so many projects going on in Columbus. You got to be proud for our schools. I mean, really, it makes you proud that we're doing all this work for our kids.
And thank you to the citizens.
Yeah, and the citizens for approving our SPLOST. Ladies, if y'all have any more, they're just numbers, Columbus High heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Y'all can look, if y'all got any questions, need to be pulled out. If not, I do it for the construction committee. You have a question?
I was just gonna ask,
There you go.
what's his name? If the stairs at Columbus High School, the new stairs at Columbus High School, will they still be accessible to everybody? Actually, people have been calling me because they use those stairs for their exercise, and they've just been following those stairs so they can run up and down the stairs again. So they will still have that privilege?
Absolutely. As soon as the stairs open back up, they'll be accessible to all.
Good, very good. Thank you, Ward. Madam Chair, that'd be all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cantrell. We will have our Finance Committee next. Ms. McCray?
9.01 are our financial statements for everyone's review. If anyone has any questions. 9.02 is a Financial Assistant Committee of the Board reviewed 2 applications for financial assistance and granted a total of $750. Do we have any questions? I think if you do, see the committee, because that's not typically discussed publicly. 9.03, purchase exception A and B. We have some expenses listed there through our CTAE funds and federal funds. 9.04, purchase exception C, maintenance, routing system. 9.05, purchase exception F, invitation to bid, RFP. Anyone have any questions? 9.06, oh, is yours doing something funny? 9.06, purchase exception G, professional services.
Because I do have a question for, I think it's 9.06. My screen has just went out.
Which item is it?
This work.
That is on 9.06.
Is that 9.06?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I don't know if anybody can speak to it, but.
Can you hit your microphone for me?
I don't know if anybody could speak to it, but I want to know, like, which schools are using this service?
Well, we did have a presentation, and Dr. Lewis, on the presentation, you said it was going to be all the schools
Also,
for the
all the
whole
schools
year,
are using
for
it?
the school year.
Not all the schools. We're continuing, Tim can speak to that, I think.
No, pretty sure you expanded something
We
at that
expanded, but not
presentation.
all of them.
It was Miss Gilmore.
No, we're on, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're good.
Good evening. Tim Smith, Executive Director of Federal Programs and Professional Development. We got an updated quote today for projected services for this year, and we're looking at 5 elementary schools, 10 middle schools, and 4 high schools participating. There was an intent to provide additional supports to some additional schools, but we did not have the funding to expand out as much as they wanted to expand.
Okay.
Yes.
I knew it was something because the presentation presented
Yeah.
more schools. Okay,
So
I was
which-
getting ready to
which
say.
schools?
So now we're changing
All we're
from
doing
what
is
was
reducing-
presented?
reducing down based on our budget.
Okay.
Yes, and some other schools will have opportunities to come on if they would like to and use their school allocations for that. But this is coming from ESSER funds, and we've earmarked the ESSER funds through the remainder of this year. So we should be, have those fully spent by September 30th of 2024.
So what's the updated schools on the list?
For elementary, it's Brewer, Fox, Georgetown, J.D. Davis, and MLK. For the middle schools, Arnold, Baker, Blackman Road, Double Churches, East Columbus, Eddy, Fort, Midland, Richards, and Veterans. And for the high schools, Hardaway, Jordan, Kendrick, and Shaw.
Were those the same people from before?
There may have been, I'd have to compare them to last year.
Okay.
So,
Just trying-
I'm concerned that Spencer High School is not on there because Spencer has one of the highest rate of out-of-school suspension, and we have a new female principal over at that school. So, I mean, what are we doing?
So Spencer will have plenty of funds. If they want to add services there, they will be able to. These are based
They're Title
on
I
when we
school,
first started expanding this out to schools. These were the schools that, for the most part, again, I have to compare them to last year, but the vast majority were the schools that were wanting in on the initial services, and as they expanded out and were hearing good things, other schools were wanting to come in.
So you're saying that Spencer didn't want the service?
Not at that time, they did not know.
Do they want the service now?
At this point, the response I got was they would be interested if they didn't have to pay for the services.
I'm kind of confused. So if they want the service, they have to pay for it.
Some other schools are getting theirs paid out of ESSER. Is that kind of,
Is
is
that,
that what you're?
Correct.
That's the definitive.
Because it was a 2-year request that was submitted from the ESSER funds.
So that, sorry, ESSER funds were locked in, and now the ones that wanted to get added
Correct.
have
Pay
to
for
come
it.
up with some of their own funds.
Out of where?
Now, that being
Title I.
said, we've
Out of
got
their
a,
Title I.
we don't have any funds anywhere to,
we do. We received a $1.2 million increase in Title I funds this year. So schools are getting more funds than they had last year, the vast majority of them. Some of it shifted because of the poverty percentage ranking shifting from last year. But the vast majority of them are seeing additional funds. And high schools, when we get increases in Title I funds, the high schools see nice increases in their allocations.
I guess my question is, go ahead.
you go ahead on, because this is just
What-
not sitting right with
Explain the
me.
funding again, based on, I want to say that presentation was probably like June or May, when your office came and presented that we were going to expand these schools. What funding were you expecting, because you were expanding?
I can't speak to the presentation. That was not my presentation. I'd have to go back.
It was
and look
Ms.
at it.
Gilmore, but you
Correct.
y'all had some principals here, talking of, it was a whole presentation. Do y'all not work together? Are we talking to two different
We work
divisions,
together,
departments or something?
yes, but
We do.
but
Okay.
talking about reduced funding that comes in, and when we get this, then at this point, keep in mind, the ESSER funds were fixed.
Right,
And then
my
school-
question
well,
is,
and the
what
point-
changed between June and now?
The school's priorities on what they wanted to spend their title money on.
And the quote increased from about 2.1 million to 3.6 million, and we could not absorb a $1.5 million increase.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
So we didn't know that in May or June, whenever.
We did not have those figures when that was put together.
Has there been any change in the rate from this works, or is that all the same as?
No,
it started?
the rate's the same for each session. There was not an increase there.
And how long have we been using this works?
Year and a half, two.
At this scale, it's been a year and a half to 2 years. We've been using them a little longer at, like, Carver High School's been doing it for probably
They
3 or
paid
4
for it.
years now. They were our first school to implement, and they've been doing it out of their funds the whole time. Carver was not a volunteer.
Title I,
They used their Title I allocation.
just like Spencer would now.
Right. So Spencer's allocation, it has exceeded 600,000 now, and they've got some funds to do some things with. It's just a matter of prioritizing for them what is most important for their needs.
Well, this is what I would like for you to do. Go back and familiarize yourself with what was presented to the board so that I can get a better understanding of what is different.
We can do
Because
that.
it was a big presentation. The school leaders were here. This was a big presentation where you expanded the schools with this service, and now you're saying, okay, we don't have the money.
We did expand.
Yes,
Just go back and get the presentation so you
think,
can familiarize yourself.
the presentation was done by Dr. Gilmore.
Right.
And brought to, and she did all the legwork for that in working with the schools. The funding source is done through the ESSER funding. So that information came from Dr. Gilmore to Dr. Smith to determine what the amount of funds were initially 2 years ago. Am I correct in saying that?
I guess it would make more sense if you knew what you were buying before you made the presentation, instead of making a wish list presentation.
Absolutely.
And then realizing we don't have the funding, and so now we're gonna change what we presented to the board. That's where I'm kind of going with that.
That was a request.
That was the quote that came back to us, was 3.6 million. 3.6.
It's,
2.14.
yeah, 2.14 now is that's what's here.
And that's what we requested last year.
I don't get it. All right, next question.
Move on.
You got something else?
It's just like a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think, maybe it would help if we had a little more just in front of us historic data of where, the works, where they were working, how much went to each school, how much was allocated, what this amount that we're being asked to approve.
I think
how
all that was
will
on that,
be allocated. But I don't remember it
on
getting
that
down into the
presentation.
dollars. I mean, I remember, and at the time, I too thought we were expanding it a lot more, and then now we're hearing not. So I think we just want to kind of see it very concrete. I don't think it's on the attachment or anything, but so we can kind of get our heads around more of where that's being used. And I understand that schools get to decide what they want, but I also don't really want to penalize some schools that might not have jumped on board 2 years ago.
Right.
And not have access to the ESSER funds. If there might be a way, I guess we can't really know unless we know how big a chunk some schools are getting. If there might be, some way to look at it a little bit more.
That's no problem.
Thank you. Any more questions on 9.06? 9.07, sole source and volatile purchases. Some pizza for $200,000.
You might want to clarify that.
Sorry, I'm sure it's a lot of pizza, or maybe it's what makes the pizza, I don't know. It just says Smart something pizzas.
So it is, it's the Smart Mouth Pizza Program.
For the cafeteria.
Yes, and it's a revenue item. It's a revenue stream item,
Maybe
right?
provides the equipment and everything.
It's the
Well,
a
I
la
mean,
carte
we're feeding a lot
in the
of children.
cafeteria. Yeah.
Next week is not having pizza.
No, I knew it was for the children. I like the smart part, like it's gonna help increase brain activities with pizza. 9.08, purchase order increases. Any questions on the two there? 9.09, competitively bid purchases. There's one. And 9.10, new budgets for fiscal year '24. Any questions? 9.11, budget adjustments for fiscal year '24. This is where it all kind of gets moved around to different spots. And then our favorite, 9.12, donations. Always thankful for all the money that our community and individuals give to our schools and our programs, and that is attached. That concludes the finance report.
Thank you so very much, Ms. McCray. I appreciate that. And we'll hear some updates from Dr. Lewis on our first day as well as our first week and all of our aches and growing pains and
All that.
traditions.
So we had a really good, all things considered, a very good start to the school year. I visited all 54 sites and programs in our district last week and got a chance. I really want to commend our plant services, our custodians. As long as I've been here, the floors aren't exactly as I want them, but they are much better than they've ever been. I've seen our custodians have really worked hard to make sure we have a good polish on the floors. Looks really clean and nice, and I really appreciate the work that has been done on those during summer. Had a lot of smiling faces. We are going through our transportation. Dr. Anderson will brief us on that a little bit. But we've actually had one of our better openings. We have spots where there are still issues, and we're dealing with that, and that'll play out over a couple of weeks, and there are reasons for that. I shared with some of the board members that we do have dead stops. We're having to call and make sure people, before we just eliminate a stop, make sure that it's not somebody just driving their children to school the first week or two. Because the last thing we want to do is eliminate a stop and then find out, oh gosh, what happened to my stop? We got to reinstitute that stop. So those are some of the things we're trying to make sure we address. We do have some new traffic patterns, lots of construction throughout the city that are causing us some heartburn as we travel. Just want to encourage everyone as far as our start times seem to be working pretty well. We've got a few little snafus we got to work every time we adjust, especially up in the north side, Veterans, North Columbus area. Anytime you put 3 schools in a cul-de-sac, you're going to have problems no matter what time somebody starts. So we're having to make some adjustments there going forward. But we totally alleviated, last I checked, we had ongoing problems with Shaw and Eagle Ridge traffic. That has been eliminated, I think, by some of these areas. So we've got a lot of great things happening, but our kids are just, I've been out, like I said, out in the schools, and they're happy. Teachers, I've asked them if there's anything they need. They've all said they're in great shape. They've got the resources they need. Principals are working very well in their schools. We start football season this week with our game starting on Friday night. So a lot of things going on, but Dr. Anderson, would you like to maybe brief us a little bit more on the transportation?
Sure, thank you very much. So we are excited that we had our best first day in a very long time based upon the numbers. And that might be hard to believe because we still had late buses, we still had long routes, and that will absolutely happen in every school district across the country at the beginning of the school year. We know that happens because it takes a while for our communities to adjust to being back in school, to students waking up on time, to parents remembering, oh, I have to go pick my child up from school, and all those things impact all school districts. But from the numbers, we got more students to school on time and home on time for the first day than we ever have in the past 10 years that we have records. So we are really excited about that. But that doesn't mean that we're done. We still have challenges. We know that it is always a challenge for our younger students to adjust to processes, to be able to ride the bus efficiently, to remember where their stop is, to get on the bus effectively, and that all has an impact to us. It's a domino effect when those things don't happen on time at the elementary level. We know that last week we saw some challenges with our parents being available to pick up the pre-K through second grade students from the bus stop in the afternoon. So that means that we brought back a lot of students to school in the afternoon because there was no one to pick them up at the bus stop. They have to be given to a responsible adult. And since elementary is our first release, when we are delayed with elementary, that means we're delayed with that middle school route and we're delayed with the high school route because we're bringing those kids back. We are working with those parents to remind them, be there to pick that child up off the bus so we can keep moving forward. We're also making some adjustments to processing our transportation request. This is a change for our entire community this year, so this is something that lots of families are feeling a bit different. We had a deadline that we stuck to, which is probably one of the first times that we've done this in our community. We stuck to a deadline. If you did not apply for transportation by July 15th, you were not guaranteed a bus pass by the first day of school. We did that for a couple of reasons. We received feedback from our families, we received feedback from our community, from our teachers and our administrators about how challenging it was that we would continually adjust bus routes every single day. So if somebody applied for a bus pass today, they got a bus pass, and then the whole route would be adjusted, and everybody got new bus passes. It's very difficult in the beginning of the school year to build your routine. It was difficult for bus drivers, difficult for the schools to maintain that. So this year we stuck to it. If you did not apply by the 15th of July, you are not guaranteed a bus pass by the beginning of the school year. You are still allowed to ride the bus. So our process is that if you find a bus stop in your neighborhood, you go there in the morning, the bus driver will take you to school. The bus driver will give you a slip and says, this is bus number 841, and this is your stop. You take that and you get a temporary bus pass that you can ride. It may not be the closest bus stop to your house, but until you get your permanent bus pass because you applied late, you will still be provided transportation. That is a new process that we implemented this year because we wanted to make it easier for our overall community who met the deadline to be able to establish their norms and routines, make it much easier for us to go through the challenging part of the school year, which is those first 2 weeks with the bus passes. So that is a challenge for those families who are used to applying late and used to be able to apply for transportation today and get a bus pass today. That has not happened for them, but they can still ride the bus. That's really important. We did not want to force any child to not have access to a bus. It just may not be their permanent bus stop. So short of being a magnet student, if you are zoned for that school, there's a bus stop in your neighborhood and you can find it. So that is new for this year. We also wanted to make sure that we mentioned 2 days of our first week of school. It rained during delivery time, so that's always going to cause challenges. It rained hard. We had some bad storms last week, so that always causes challenges, but we still made it. We know that our current challenges are, as always with our magnet and ESOL routes, they're still longer than we would like for them to be. We're actively working with our magnet schools to identify those students who don't want to ride the bus, so we can take them out of the route. Because our magnet and ESOL students are personalized routes, oftentimes the stop only has one child. And so if you know that you're not going to ride the bus, but you requested transportation anyway, if you can let us know that you're not going to be riding the bus, we'll go ahead and take you off. Columbus High, which is our largest magnet school, has already done that process for us. We were able to get 2 additional buses available for other schools based upon just auditing their routes. And so there's 2 buses we took away from Columbus High because they didn't need them, and we were able to reallocate those resources. So we're still going through that process. The other area that we're experiencing some difficulties, as we do in the beginning of each school year, is our SPED transportation, because that is another population that is very personalized. It is door-to-door transportation, and so we want to make sure that we're continuing to work with those families to develop routes that are convenient and effective for them, efficient for them. And then we still have staffing shortages, so we're actively hiring. If you know someone who would like to drive a bus, it is a great way to spend your mornings and your afternoons. We are hiring. Our next steps is to continue to do the dead stop process, as the superintendent mentioned, as well as the magnet audits, and then to release the bus passes for the people who applied late. That happens starting next week. And so with the first 2 weeks, we maintain status quo, and the next week we do that process. And And that's it. We are on track to meet the goals that we mentioned that are associated with the schedule changes. We never expected that we would meet those in the first couple of weeks of school, but we are on track to meet those goals.
I just have a question about the pre-K babies. So did the parents have to come to the school and get them, or did you route them back out?
So if you're not there to pick the child up, we bring the child back to the school, and the parents have to come to the school to pick them up.
Okay. So
The only time we would
so
take
the
them
school
back-
officials have to stay later?
School officials have to stay late. The only time we would take them back is, and it happens in the beginning of the school year, when the child gets on the wrong bus, or if they miss their stop because they can't even see just when it's their stop, and they're just not used to that, then we will take them back. But if it's because a parent is not there, they have to come and get them.
Okay. And also, you're gonna update us on our usual outages with air or things of that nature?
Well, we've had a couple of, with construction, we've had a couple of outages of power. We had one at Arnold this afternoon that went out about an hour and a half before the end of school, I think it was, something like that. That was done by construction, just one of those things that happen. We do have, I will share with you, we've had inordinately hot days, not that I have to tell anybody in here, but that causes our air conditioners on our buses to work harder, and some of those are going out, and we're trying to get those repaired as quickly as possible. But again, that's just a function of the heat we're all experiencing, quite frankly. But as far as our schools, most of them, I've not heard any major problems. We've had a couple of power outages that were not scheduled at all, but those have gotten back on as quickly as possible, and I think we're in pretty good shape. There's one little girl from Columbus High School that I see at Publix with regularity, and she let me know that the air conditioning is working just fine at Columbus High School for the first time in her career there, so she's very happy.
That's good.
So that's good. So, yeah.
Before I say that, though, I will say my new high schooler, he was very impressed with how clean the school was, just if you want to add that to your list of, he was very, Mr. Battles, sorry, what is the rule? I know a lot of practices have been because of the heat. What is that standard that they, just kind of curious.
And while he's walking, Mr. Cantrell, what's your question? Because he was.
I can pass right now. That's fine.
Well, while Mr. Bell is coming up, I will say one of the benefits, the new change in schedule, I was at Northside High School earlier this week, and they said their coaches are actually feeling like they're getting more done because they're doing some practicing and weight training in the morning. And with all the weather delays they've had with rain and so on, they've actually they're getting more work done because it's cooler, and they're not facing some of the weather issues that we've been seeing in the afternoon.
We follow the Georgia High School Association policy for heat and humidity. And so we don't go off of a temperature, we go off of a wet bulb reading, which is a gauge that reads the temperature, the humidity, the wind, several other factors, and then that gives you a number. So it's not really a temperature number, it's a number that includes several factors. And so we read that, we read it 30 minutes before practice starts, and then we read it every 30 minutes during practice. There's 5 different guidelines on there depending on where that number falls, anywhere from regular practice to how much protective equipment you can wear, to you can't wear any protective equipment, helmets only for football, or football's really the only sport that protective equipment comes into. Every other sport, really, it falls under the brakes and things of that nature. And then it goes to the worst one is an hour practice with every 4 breaks in that hour. And then at a certain one, you can't practice outside at all, which most of our schools were under today.
And it's obviously district-wide.
It is district-wide, and the middle school follows a similar policy. It's a little more stringent for the middle schools. The number's a little lower, but the high school follows exactly what the GHSA sets.
And how will could that impact games? I mean, just looking at the heat we have right now.
It does.
If they couldn't practice today, it makes me, wonder what's going to happen Friday night.
So it does impact our it does impact our games mostly with softball is where you see it the most. Our cross country meets start a little later in the day. Our football games start a little later in the day. So it's usually below the threshold to where they can't start at that point. Officials are in charge of the game. So there's not you cannot play in a game situation. But what they do say is that there's some regulations on you got to have an ice tub nearby and the trainer, and there's some regulations that we have to follow during games when there is a high heat advisory.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I always like to get updated. Thank you.
Mr. Cantrell?
Yes. Travis, since we've made the change in the school, and I know it's probably early, how is the new bus routes doing? I mean, that was one of the main reasons why we changed. Did it improve the first week? Can you tell a big difference? Because that's one of the reasons we thought it would be a big difference.
Absolutely. So you talk to any of the middle school principals, and they're probably very excited that buses showed up on time and left on time for the most part at those schools. Also, the 6 a.m. start time, bus stop time, is very effective for all of our routes. The only route that we're struggling with right now are those individual routes with SPED. So those students, some of them, the parents have requested a bus stop time before 6 a.m. And so we're trying to work with them to get all students, to include our special needs students, to have bus stop times after 6 a.m. But that was one of the big goals, and we're already reaching that goal.
The children, and this is from a parent this week, her child was left at school and did not catch the bus. And she called the school, and sure enough, the child was still in the classroom. And so who loads the bus? Do the teachers load the buses in elementary school? Do they make sure that the class is all on board?
So one of the things that is very difficult about making sure transportation is on time during the beginning of the school year is just that. It takes a while for students and teachers to get used to that process. Most schools at the elementary level, the teachers are the ones responsible for sending the student to ride a bus to a certain location and then loading. But normally it's based upon when your bus number is called. It takes a while for the students to remember their bus number, for the teachers to know their bus number. So in the beginning of the school year, we are very used to students being put on the wrong bus or not getting on the bus.
Imagine.
So that happens on a regular basis, and that also slows us down a little bit until everyone gets familiar with that, what bus number a child is assigned to. But typically, teachers will dismiss a student when their bus number is called, and then they're loaded onto the bus based upon
And how many children are we ballpark busing this year?
Total? Mm-hmm. 1 second. A little under 19,000 is registered.
Wow. So it went up again.
Yes, it's gone up.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. I'll give you that exact number in a second.
She mentioned targets, because I have heard from some people. For those who
Hold on 1 second, Laura.
a 2-hour ride home, is that going to improve?
Yes.
Okay, and when
Those
can
are
we tell them?
primary, our magnet and ESOL routes, which we are, like as discussed earlier, those are the routes that we are actively auditing so we can decrease their route time.
Okay, so tell them to bear with it, and hopefully by when, we think?
It takes 2 weeks to do the dead stop process, and after we do the dead stop process, we'll reroute those routes.
Okay.
And I know you can't give an exact date, but a guesstimate on when the special education transportation issues may be worked out?
There are a couple of things involved with that. It depends upon our recruitment efforts and how many new bus drivers we're able to add in. And then also it's parent requests. So there are certain times, because of what's best for the parent schedule, since it is door to door, we may not ever change those. It is our goal to not have them picked up before 6 a.m. But if they request it, because that's what's convenient and efficient for their family, then we will honor that request. So some of them may not ever change, and they may still be before 6 a.m.
But are there still some students who have not been picked up from special ed?
If special ed routing process is a little different, they request it through the PES department first, and they review the needs in the IEP, and then it gets sent over to transportation. And so I can't speak to how many are in that process of reviewing their needs.
Gotcha.
At this point. It's very individualized, so there may be some who have not been assigned routing yet.
Great, thank you.
I know there are some parents who are waiting, SPED parents who are waiting for us to get past before, and I've been encouraging them, no, you kind of need to let us know about the SPED route, but they were just, for the little ones that are SPED, they were just kind of taking them and picking them up, and because they're familiar with this 2-week time period when things are unpredictable.
Everybody has to get used to a new schedule in the beginning of the year, because as y'all know, I go to Burger King in the morning, and the bus drivers come complaining about the schedules too. So at the beginning of the year, everybody has to get used to the schedule, the bus drivers, the students, the parents. We just gotta get through it for a couple of weeks and reassess
Right.
and do it again.
It's
Every
complex.
year.
It is.
Every year.
But we're seeing improvements every day. And so I spent my afternoons last week at Richards Middle School, and they celebrated because each day their late buses were better and better every single day. The first day they gained 5 minutes, the next day was 10 minutes, then it was 15 minutes. So every day it's getting better.
That's great.
And everybody stay healthy.
Anything else? All right, board members, we do have an executive session for a legal matter. Got a motion by Ms. Buckner, second by Ms. McCray. All in favor? Going into executive session, raise your hand and wave bye. Thank you all.